Alright, fellow sleuths, time to take a look at the second episode of the day, which is The Drowned Woman. Nancy and the Drew crew meet outside the Claw to discuss having wounded the Igleka. Nancy thinks the sand turned into the seaweed wrap because she was the last to touch the sand and the wrap was her portent. Bess knows that the sun is about to rise and they only have one day left before they die. Nancy thinks if they could get more potent sand and divvy it up, they can use it to defeat her once and for all. The judge would lure the Igleka using themselves as bait. Nancy doesn't find sand in the blanket where she kept the seaweed wrap. It's best to clean out the space and throwing away the sand is an act of purifying her chi. George searches for sand at her apartment but doesn't find any. Jessie presents food that she made and her sisters fight over it. George breaks up the fight and decides to eat with her sisters for the first time in a while. Before the girls leave for school, they decide to take a selfie. Ace and Nick are working on his truck, but Ace is distracted by looking at AJ's death photo, which had captured a photo of the lake in the background. They realize that she collects her victims personally. They enough sand to split 5 ways, but none of the Drew crew have found any sand yet. They meet again at the Claw. Bess and George argue, which leads the group turning on each other one by one. Nick yells at Nancy for using people as distractions for her pain, which reminds him that his mom had just died when they started hooking up. George thinks Nancy is using distraction to avoid tying up loose ends. Bess blames Nancy for all them being cursed, so Nancy storms out of the Claw to fix everything. Ryan and Carson spy on Nancy. Ryan isn't sure what is too far, as his father used to pay PIs to spy on him until Ryan paid off the PI himself. Carson recommends some parenting books. Carson brings up Everett's trial, but Ryan doesn't think it will go that far, nor is he sure about testifying. Nancy goes to Hannah to ask for sand, and she hopes that support was left in one of the lockboxes at the Historical Society. Hannah promises to search for possibilities. While she's gone, Nancy stoops in the ledger until Hannah stops her. She warns Nancy that the items do more harm than good, so Nancy leaves. Once outside, she spots Ryan's car. She remembers that her portent came in the car and walks over to confront them. His car's clean because he vacuums every day, but luckily, he keeps the vacuum in his trunk. Nancy borrows the vacuum and tells her dad to stop worrying about her. She sends a voice message to everyone and leaves them sand so they can make the Igleka think they've given up. When she comes to claim them, they can catch her off guard and kill her. This is the first person to use the sand to weaken her, since enough it can destroy her forever. Whoever uses first can't miss. The Drew crew take their places in their death visions, holding the sand in their hands as they wait. Bess calls Nick and George, who patch at Ace, then Nancy. Bess thinks they should tie up loose ends just in case. Ace confesses that he acted to witness protection to get the number of someone but didn't call them. Bess admits taking Ace's pocket knife, George's jewelry, and Nick's fab, but she wants to try and stop stealing things if she lives. Nick confesses that he hasn't done the one thing that Tiffany wanted him to do, take down the Hudsons. He didn't want to be the sacrificial lamb. Ace still thinks there's too many holes in the information and he needs someone on the inside before he takes down the Hudson Empire. Nancy gives Nick her permission when he asks. George doesn't have any regrets. Nancy regrets hurting all of them, and the Drew crew believe her. They all begin to hear the sea shanty. Moments later, Nancy slips down the cliff and screams for help. Everyone's portents begins to come true as the fireplace turns on, the researcher closes and the hook falls. Nancy hangs from the cliff, and Nick and George are confronted by the Igleka as her first victims. The truck fills with water, the Nick escapes from the loose roof and frees George. The sand-heavy work to get rid of her. Their portent passes and so does everyone else's. Louise's arm is stabbed and Nancy hangs from the cliff. Nick opens his truck door and water floods out. Nancy struggles on the cliff as she screams for help. Carson's words to just hold on echo in her mind. She pulls herself up to the cliff and back onto land. At the Claw, Bess patches up Ace's arm. Suddenly, they experience a new death vision of all of them on the floor of the Claw having died. As they didn't kill the Igleka but just angered her, Nancy has no idea what to do. Bess offers to drive George home so she can spend her last hours with the people she loves. George knows everything that her sisters are doing, and if she came home early, she would disrupt their schedules. She wants to take Bess to the Marvin estate, but Bess would rather spend it with her friends. Ace calls the number of the witness protection habitant, as he might be his brother. Ryan drives out to the woods to meet with Nick, who gives Ryan the USB drive Tiffany gave him. He entrusts the drive to Ryan. as Nancy will let him in if he proves himself. Ryan takes it but doesn't promise anything. Nancy visits Carson with pizza just like the night they shared barbecue chicken pizza when she was 12. She wants to pretend it's that night again. She asks him to pretend for her, though he can't pretend he didn't mess everything up. He promises that doesn't change how much he loves her. She doesn't understand how he can love something that wasn't his. He explains that the love wasn't a lie and that love will live in him forever. She realizes that the Glaker remembers even after she died. Before Nancy leaves, she tells Carson she loves him, calls him Dad, and gives him a hug. She gathers the Drew crew with Odette's letters. Nancy wishes she was wrong. The portent only reminded Odette of the trauma she endured and why she became the Igleka. But she thinks that they can appeal to the human the monster was. Nancy divvies up the letters from Odette so they can all read them, with Nick being the only one who can speak French. George is exasperated with the idea, but it's the only one they hadn't tried. They were the letters that Odette and the English woman met in London. Odette made the voyage to make a life for them despite being scared of the water, though the English woman loved the beach. Odette promised to send the English woman bottles of sand when she arrived in America. They hear the shanty begin to play, and the Igleka appears behind them. They begin to read the letters, but the Igleka blasts Ace backwards with her scream, then George and each of her victims. Her screams are immense and painful. Nancy manages to continue saying the letters as she remembers them by heart. One by one, the rest of the Drew crew remember and recite them. The Igleka screams in protest and then explodes into a puddle of water. From the water appears Odette, human once more, and they remind her that she is not what the sailors did to her on the ship. The ground begins to shake violently until everything goes flying in an explosion, and Odette disappears. Nick realizes that they made it past midnight and the curse is over. But happiness is short-lived when they see that George is impaled. They pull the harpoon and Bess tries to apply pressure with a towel. George tells Nick she loves him as he holds her. She dies moments later. Nancy tells Nick that George said she loves him and they all begin to break down. Nancy jumps to her feet and leaves as she can't let it happen. Nick refuses to let anyone else near George. Nancy breaks into the Historical Society to steal a shroud used to revive the dead. She breaks the circuit breaker which opens all the lockers. She grabs the shroud and leaves. Hannah warns her that the effects of the shroud might be dangerous. Nancy returns to the claw and covers George with the shroud, and after several moments, she gasps awake. Next morning, they set outside now that they don't have any mysteries or curses to solve. Nancy warns them not to jinx it, with George leaving to get cider for a toast. George sings in French as she gets the cider, but as she walks away, Odette's reflection is in the mirror. Nancy walks along the pier but feels a breeze that distracts her. At the Historical Society, the lockers begin to fling open as ghosts and spirits are released onto the town. Nancy rolls around, having heard something. Oh boy, Nancy, what have you done now? Oof. So anyway, let's take a look at some trivia surrounding this episode. The Drowned Woman was supposed to air as a season 1 finale, but due to production being shut down, the episode aired in season 2 instead. The writers planned for George to be killed by the harpoon since early production of season 1. The lone idea being that George was going to launch the harpoon like a spear from the back of Nick's truck. She would say the line, "Maritime family, bitch." Oh boy. So I think this is a pretty good episode, and yeah, I like the fact that the Igleka thing is over, but now I have to deal with Odette. Well, then Odette possessed George now, so yay. So overall, I give The Drowned Woman 5 Deerstalkers out of 5. Well, anyway, tune in as we took the final episode of the day, The Riddle of the Broken Doll. So until then, remember everyone, the game's afoot.